Base, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome.
The Lamed Vovniks.
Welcome back, everybody. You're almost on Tuesday.
Tessie.
Oh, testing, yeah, testing. Not there yet. All right. So today is Daf Lamed Zion.
It's an old bat.
Tessie was an old bat. So we left off Lamed Vav on Bays, the two dots.
She's an anti-Semite.
So we were discussing making chazakas. Now, actually, there's two types of chazakas. We're going to see the second type of chazaka today. But till now, we pointed basically at what point is a person basically they didn't have good internet connection, and therefore they didn't have access to their deeds, and therefore if a person normally you purchase something, you show the deed, and therefore you own it. But if you don't have the deed, so normally if a person's online for 3 years, we say, so then it's assumed that the owner had, if the other guy didn't sell him the land, he would have made some sort of protest. But the guy's been living or working his field for 3 years. Obviously, it's his. So therefore, even if he doesn't show a deed after the chazaka, it's assumed to be his. So then we had Rabbi Shmuel. We had a couple of different variations. So the Mishnah says, "Am Rabbi Shmuel." We're talking about grains. It's 14 months or 18 months. But when it comes to an orchard, you could even, it says Rabbi Shmuel, you could have one orchard with olives, figs, and dates, and you do each harvest in that year, right? And therefore, basically, that could be a chazaka. That could be a chazaka because you did 3 different harvests, right? And therefore, that counts as a chazaka.
What's the state of
Like grains.
Great.
Right. Like they normally, when you talk about produce, as opposed to orchards or trees. Right. Right. Or vegetables. Thank you. So I'm going to buy 4 lands from the bottom and Lamed Vav and base. I'm going to buy Rabbi. I'm going to buy Rabbi Shmuel from the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel. Nishmal Rabbanan. We can actually also see the opinion of the Rabbanan. What do you mean? Hayu lo shloishim ilanais mimata aser lebeisa. So a guy had an orchard of 30 trees and 10 trees per beisa, right? Beisa is basically the size of the courtyard, right? Is 5,000, right? 2,500, 50 by 50 amos, and that is that space. So that space can properly nourish.
I thought it could be like 5,000 amos, no?
Right. It's 50 by 50.
Oh.
So we say so. So in this space of 2,500 square amos, you can plant 10 trees appropriately. If you put too many trees there's not enough nutrients from the ground, and the trees will eventually die, and you have to uproot it. If there only, let's say, plant 6, so you're not planting space, but it doesn't really show ownership of the entire area because you didn't utilize the entire area. Why did you only plant in 60%? Maybe you only owned 60%. But if you do 100%, which is be 10 per besa, then it shows you're utilizing the entire field. So if he had 330 and it was divided basically 3 different base saw. So achal asar b'shanazu, v'asar b'shanazu, v'asar b'shanazu, hare zu chazaka. Of each one he goes over and 1 year 1 he does this base saw, and year 2 the second base saw, and year 3. So that qualifies as a chazaka. So even though each one he only did 1 time.
Okay.
So
with the Ilanos, I don't. Ilanos are there for a while.
So we're trying to say that a person is creating a chazaka to show his ownership over the field.
Oh, so he planted those trees.
No.
No. The trees have been planted. He harvested it.
He
He bought an orchard from somebody else. I bought an orchard from you. You planted those were planted 60 years ago. I don't know how long fruit trees last, but whatever. 60 years ago, right? So, and I'm proving ownership by I'm working the field. So says Rabbi Shmuel. So, or this, right? So 3 years in a row, 1 year. So I bought 3 base saw, right? 1 year I harvested this base saw. 2nd year I harvested this base saw, and the 3rd year I harvested this base saw. Says Rabbi Shmuel, this entire area, I just created chazaka. That's what we're saying.
Those each separate as well.
Even though we only did right. So I have a chazaka in all of them. Now, lab mi amar Rabbi Shmuel chad peirei have a chazaka l'ku peirei. So we learned earlier that in the case of the Mishnah, when he says, "Hey, as long as you go ahead and do," let's say I had an orchard and I did 1 year, or excuse me, one time I did olives, one time I did dates, one time I did figs. Each one is considered to be making a chazaka for all of them. And when I do the olives, it's basically count. You need 3 times for a chazaka. So when I do olives, it's considered to be the entire field once, including the other areas. When I do figs, it's the entire field twice, right? When I do dates, it's the entire field a third time. Notice there's 3 harvests going on, not just in that area that I harvested the dates, but even the area where the figs and the olives were, those are considered to be harvested. That was Rabbi Shmuel's mission. So it's over here. Even though I did each base saw only once, it counts towards the other areas are considered to be harvested, and therefore I can get to 3, even though each individual I only did 1 time. So hakinami. So it's over here. Hani havi chazak lahani, hani havi chazak lahani. So it's over here. When I make a chazaka on A, right, base saw A, it counts basically towards the first time that base saw B is having work done, and therefore you can get to the number of 3. Bahani bili heicha deloi afikum. That's only talking about basically these harvests are every 3 years. Why? Right, but let's say each one of them harvest, and I only go, each one of them are ready every year, and I only do one of them. So why didn't I do the other 2? It must be I didn't buy the other 2, right? So it's only because the other ones aren't ready and they're not, ready to be harvested, which counts towards chazaka. But if they're all ready to be harvested and I only harvest a fraction of them, it shows I don't own the entire field, and therefore it would not help with the chazaka. And furthermore, and every 3 years. As I say, I know that we have like apples and those type of astrogam every year.
Astrogam.
Yeah, but
Can
they got
remain on the tree.
Oh, is that what it is?
Year after year.
maybe these trees were not all mature, like you're saying.
Right. No. It could be the rain season,
Or
right.
perhaps maybe they were in the years of Orla. So
right. So we have to think
So
before
he has
Orla,
to
right? Can you go ahead and do
so
Orla?
he has to
Right.
wait for that tree anyway.
Right. And the second condition is Behud the Ba'azi Ba'azuzer. Also, we're talking about place.
He says to go but no shua. She'ain't payroll can need marimad.
Right. I think that's a type of date, right? Isn't it?
Oh, maybe, yeah. Every 3 years they come out.
Yeah. I guess there's certain right. And Behud Ba'azi Ba'azuzer. Also, we're talking about when they're scattered properly, because if it was not scattered properly, let's say it's too dense, and the trees would be cut off. And if I own a property, I wouldn't have so many trees close together, because then shows that I know ultimately that the trees are going to be uprooted. Now, next case. So 2 dots. So let's say a person goes ahead and he sells something. Now, this is actually something to remember, right? When I go ahead, it's not actually not the chazak we're talking about 3 years. We're actually talking about like if I sell someone a piece of land, okay? So they have to make a kinyan on it, right? You can't just handshake is not a kinyan, right? So you have to show ownership. You build a fence, you start digging, you do something to the property, right? So let's say I have a field with trees on it, and I go ahead and I sell to Mayor the trees, and I sell to Mark the karka. So so each one, so Mayor goes ahead and makes a chazak on the trees, and Mark to the land, and Amarav Zvid. Zed kana ilanos, zed kana karka. Each one, Mayor got the trees, and the trees only knows he doesn't have the ground around the trees. Once that tree is done, it's done. Mayor's out of there, and Mark just gets the land, and he doesn't get any benefit from the trees. So that's Zvid's interpretation of this. Now, Maskav Papa Imke Elo Labal Ilanois Bekarka. If you're going to say that the guy who owns the tree, Mayor in this case, doesn't have anything in the ground, so Lemale Bal Karka, let the owner of the buyer of the ground, i.e. Mark, say Labal Ilanus to Mayor, the owner of the trees, take your trees off my land. Right? So it can't be that Mayor doesn't own any land of it, or others Mark can say, take your trees off my land. Elamar of Papa, Zekani Lanais, Vachatzi Karka, Zekana Chatzi Karka. Rather, what it is One has the trees and the ground around it, supporting it. And the other one, they sold the karka to, just has the karka. So therefore, when I go ahead and sell trees, the karka, the land around it, is included. So that was Rav Papa. Rav Papa says it was included, and Rav Zvid says, no, I sell each one is complete, only trees and no land. The other one's land and no trees. So let's see. So pshita. Now let's say another case, similar case. Now I once again selling, but instead of selling to two different people, one the land, one the karka, I'm the seller. Right? There's two options here, right? There's the land, right, and there's the trees. I'm retaining the other one, so I'm selling one and I'm retaining the other. So if pshita, it's obvious in the case malcha karka v'shari lanos. If I go ahead and sell mayor the land and I'm keeping the trees for myself, lefanav v'shari lanos lefanav yesh karka. So when I leave the trees, right, I don't leave the trees with putting myself at risk for mayor saying, "Hey, take your trees off my land." So obviously, when I sell mayor the land, I'm leaving over some of the land around my trees because the trees are not included in the sale. The afilu Rabbi Kiva, even according to Rabbi Kiva, when a person sells, he normally sells generously, and therefore he'll include things that were not necessarily, included and won't be stingy. So a person sells something generous. If I sell you, something, Hani Mili, Gabi Borg, I have a deuce, so then let's say I go ahead and I sell a pit. This is what my plug is. So I sell someone a pit. So if I was generous, I would sell you the entire land around my pit. Okay. I retain the pit. I need the water. You can have all the land. I'm not working land. Take all the land. And so I'm so generous. I didn't even include land for myself for access to the pit. If I want to go ahead and access my pit, I got to pay you or ask you for, right away. So therefore, even in the case of a person generous, that's only talking about a pit, right? Which is not damaging to the ground around it. So therefore, I know at no point are you ever going to say, yo, I'll take your pit away from my land. When it comes to trees, the machishabara, is damaging. So therefore, right, if I retain the trees and I sell mayor all the land, mayor is going to say, you know what, your roots of your trees are rooting my ground. Take your trees out of here. Right. So therefore, certainly I would go ahead and leave myself land around the trees, right, that I'm retaining in order that mayor, can't have any claims against me. Dilo shire, lay malay, because if I don't leave any land around it, then I have no rights to the land where the tree's growing on, lay malay, go ahead and take your tree off my land. So that was the case. Evan agrees. However, but let's say this: I sell mayor the trees. And I say I'm retaining the land. So what was included in the sale of the trees? The trees. So pluk said Rabbi Kiva Rabbanan. That would be a machlekes between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbanan. The Rabbi Kiva, according to Rabbi Kiva, a person normally who is generous. So therefore, when I'm selling mayor something, I'm a generous guy. He's like mayor gets some land with it, and the Rabbanan, and according to Rabbanan, Leslie, right? And according to Ban, who says when I sell, I'm not generous. So therefore, I sold mayor trees only, no land. And he says, no, Rabbi Kiva, and according to Rabbi Kiva, Islave, Yafilu Rabbi Zvid. According to Rabbi Kiva, so mayor gets land, even according to Rabbi Zvid. Now remember, the case of Rabbi Zvid was when I sell to two different buyers. Each one gets all. One gets all the land, the other one gets all the trees, and there's no mixture. But even in that case, where Rav Zvid says that, Diamar Elo over there, when he says the owner of the trees he bought, he doesn't get any of the land. Hani Mili Gabi Shnei Lekuchos. That's only when there's two buyers. Now it's just like Mayor could say, hey, just like you have no tree, or just like you have all the land and no trees, so too. I have all trees and no land. In other words, each one has the full amount. But over here, when he's retaining, over here, he could be generous. And over there, since I'm selling one, so therefore I'm selling, the same way I'm selling to one, I have to sell to the other. In other words, I can't be generous selling to the guy with the trees, right? Why? Because at whose expense am I being generous on? The guy who's buying the land. Right? So I can't be generous there. So therefore, the guy I'm selling the land, you get all the land. The guy selling the tree, you get all the tree. But in this case, when I'm retaining, then I sell you the tree, I can be generous there, says Rav Zvid, and therefore some of the land would be included.
Okay.
And even according to the Rabbanan Leslie, And that would usually say the Rabbanan, he does not, in this case, when he sells, he does not include any land. If you have Papa, even according to Papa, in the case of two different buyers, Damar Yeshlo, that says that two different buyers, that even the guy who bought the tree also gets some karka. Hani Mili, Gabish in the Kukas, that's only by two buyers, Damar Lay. Just like I sold to you generously, sold to the Didi Nami Zavin Bayin Yafa. Well, over there, I sell you generously because it's two different people. I can be generous because it's someone else's expense. Okay, you want some land with the trees? Take it, right? Doesn't hurt me. But over here, when it's at the expense of myself, the Rabbanan will say the person will not include it. And Amri Nahardia, so they said Nahardia, Aklan with Sufin Eloi Chazak. A person goes ahead. When he did all of them together and they were too close, it does not a chazaka, because once again it does not show, because it just shows that these are going to be uprooted pretty soon because there's not enough nutrients, and therefore he takes off all at one time. He doesn't really look for it to remain a long period, and therefore it's not a chazaka. So maskeva Rav Elamiata, but according to this, hi Misha the Espasta, but my kanile. So the spasta, right, this animal feed that's planted really densely. So how can you say that? The whole point of it is to be densely, it does get uprooted. So what a chazaka there? What it means is if it was too dense, it means he doesn't get the land around it. Since the trees are going to go bad in a couple of years, it's expected the trees are going to get leave. The trees are expected to leave. That's what he means, that I know they're going to get uprooted, and therefore you don't get any land. You're not going to be in the long term. In other words, the person has trees too close, then those trees will be gone, and then therefore there is no proof to the karka. And Rab Zera says it's actually tonight. It's a machlokas tonight. So Kerenshu night to el pachas merabamos. So if you have a vineyard, that normally we saw earlier, they need between rows of a vineyard for the vines. You need to plow in between. That's why you don't do it so close to the border. So you plow. You need 4 amos to plow. So let's say you had a vineyard, but it was 3 apart, right? It was not 4. So it's not considered a vineyard. And now, since it's not going to last, it's considered to be nothing. And that was the opinion we saw before. Since
the vines
they were too close to each other, so therefore it doesn't qualify as a vineyard. It is considered a vineyard. In other words, even though there's a gap in between 3, so therefore you create as if there's a gap of 4. And anything in between is considered not to be there, but it still is considered to be a vineyard, right? It's not going to be, let's say, planting wheat over there, right? If it's in the actual vineyard, so if it qualifies as a vineyard, despite the fact that it's too close, so therefore planting kilayim over there would be forbidden. If it is not considered to be too close, and therefore it would still qualify as a vineyard, therefore one would not be able to go ahead and plant, as opposed to say, if you just say there's single plants out there that are too close to each other, it's not a vineyard. It's not a vineyard. You could go ahead and plant wheat there. All right, we'll stop here at the bottom. Shkoyach everybody. So we will pick up from here.